Hello and welcome to Diecast Restos. My name is Jason and this is the Matchbox 33C Lamborghini Miura. It was in Lesney's range from 1968. It switched to the new Superfast wheels in late 1969 and remained in production until 1973. Cast engines featured on the regular wheels cars, but these were removed on the switch to Superfast. Also lost in the switchover was the auto steer system. There was never any additional trim applied to the casting, and that's a real shame, as all of the Miura's hallmark details are a bit anonymous without them highlighted. This then is the gold Superfast version, and I intend to go to town on it, giving it the full custom treatment to make it look much closer to the real thing. Both cars are in relatively good but play-worn condition, though the yellow regular wheels one has very thin paint. To the naked eye, it looks much worse than it does under my studio lighting. The regular wheels 68 to 69 Miuras came in yellow with a red plastic interior. They then switched to the Superfast Gold late in the run with a change to an ivory interior. Yellow versions can occasionally be found with an ivory interior, likewise the gold versions with a red interior. The cast engine block was actually removed just prior to the Superfast switch. These models had the usually clear louvres covering the engine, now frosted. Now I can reveal that engine casting in greater detail. It is sat on this raised platform that allowed the rear axle to pass through while sitting underneath the suspension clip. Now I'll grab the Superfast base for a comparison. I assume the planned Superfast switch and the need to fit larger wheels was the reason for the engine's demise. Colours for the Superfast cars were yellow, bronze, gold and a lime gold. Base plates were initially silver plated unpainted metal, but could later be found in pink, red and black. Of course, this casting is based on Italian manufacturer Lamborghini's two-seat mid-engine sports car, the Miura. 764 Miuras were built between 1966 and 1973. They came with a 3.9 litre 5-speed manual V12, and on its release, it was the fastest production road car in the world. Its prototype, named the P400, was developed by Lamborghini designers Gianpaolo Dallara, Paolo Stanzani and Bob Wallace, a Kiwi. It was envisioned to be a road car with racing pedigree, and it was a project the trio worked on at night. They needed to convince company founder Ferruccio Lamborghini that the car would not be too drastic a shift in focus, and also not be too expensive. Lamborghini himself allowed his engineers free rein in developing the prototype. It was to have a transversely mounted mid-engine layout, merged with the gearbox, mostly due to a lack of space in the compact body design. The body was styled by Bertoni and was finished just days before its grand reveal at the 1966 Geneva Motor Show. Having been known by its P400 prototype name until now, the car was given the name Miura after the famous Spanish fighting bull. The P400 name remained attached to the launch car, the Miura P400. 275 were produced between 1966 and 1969. The P400S Miura launched in 1968, featuring power windows, chrome window surrounds, and engine modifications that boosted power by 20 horsepower. 338 S models were produced between December 1968 and March 1971. Famous owners included Frank Sinatra, Miles Davis, who crashed his in 1972 driving under the influence, and Eddie Van Halen. Van Halen's P400S can be heard revving during the bridge section of the song Panama.
Yeah, we're running a little bit hot tonight.
Now the base has polished up nicely and that engine is shining again. I now freshen up the wheel hubs with some chrome, and now I prepare to strip the paint using caustic soda. The The P400 SV was the last and probably most notable Miura. The SV lacked the eyelashes that were so distinctive on its predecessors, so it's visually easily recognisable. Production began in 1971. Engines now pushed out 380 horsepower, an increase of 15 horsepower. 150 SVs were produced until 1973, with the Miura's successor, the Countach, later launching in 1974. There are 6 examples of the P400 SVJ, based on the one-off P400 Jota Miura. It was created by Bob Wallace as a test mule for the FIA's Appendix J racing series. 5 of the 6 were converted SVs, but 1 was built new. Nicolas Cage bought one, which was owned by the Shah of Iran in 1997 for $490,000 US. He again sold it in 2002. One chassis has since sold for $1.9 million. A further one-off Roadster Miura was built as a show car in 1968. It was the only Miura to have been designed for this purpose, featuring a Targa top style roof. A 40th anniversary Miura concept was displayed in 2006, though Lamborghini had no intention of placing it in production. Here I'm painting the formerly ivory coloured interior black for my custom Miura, the first step of my many modifications. The Tamiya TS16 yellow is a safe match to the original thin yellow seen on the casting earlier. Those swooping yet muscular lines were pretty revolutionary in 1966. They are reflected well in this casting, which came out just 2 years after the Miura's launch. Can you imagine the furore at Geneva in 1966 as the world set its eyes on what we now know as the first supercar? It changed everything. Until now, Lamborghini had been creating luxurious GT cruisers such as the 350 GT and the concurrent 400 GT. This didn't stop Lamborghini creating more GT cars such as the Islero, Espada and the Jarama, but the Miura was a game changer for the top end of the market. Despite the fuel crises of the 1970s, Porsche released their 911 Turbo shortly after the Countach, but the real supercar boom followed with the financial boom of the 1980s, with entries from Ferrari with the 288 GTO and then the Ferrari F40, and Porsche producing the 959. So here I put back together my restored yellow Miura, first placing in the cleaned and polished window piece. Next, the red interior, freshly washed. Finally, I slot the grille section through the slot at the front and push down over the 2 tiny posts at the rear to seal it. Now back to my custom build. I'm giving this custom a coat of light green, arguably my favourite colour on a Miura. But to be honest, there aren't many I wouldn't choose. I don't often do bright colours, so this is a great opportunity to use it. Once 2 coats have dried, I use some masking tape and top it with a clear coat to create a seal. The Miura was famously offered with 2-tone paint. I'm going to recreate that here with the silver side skirts to complement the lime green. With those complete, I begin my extensive detailing. First, I offer chrome to the exhaust tips, and then the rear light cluster. The registration illumination bulb housing is then coated, a touch on the badge, and then the other light cluster. Finally, the side badges are picked out. Now I use my black Sharpie to fill out the classic British registration plate. It reads SGO 290F. An F registration suffix indicates the vehicle would have been registered anywhere from the 1st of August 1967 and the 31st of July 1968. The GO section of the registration plate would also indicate the car, if it actually existed, would have been registered in London. Continuing to use my Sharpie, I've begun filling in the grills and the car's unique eyelashes. I also do the door interiors to match the black sprayed interior seen earlier. Now I fetch my coloured Sharpies for the rear light clusters. I just love how that rear end detail is starting to come together and stand out. I've used a bit of the MOLOTOW chrome to pick out the steering wheel and the switches and gauges of the interior, as well as the gear knob and handbrake tip. The pop-up headlights are coated with X2 white gloss now. Then Citadel gloss is washed over them to add another layer of depth. I continue by brushing over the grills and running it along the cast body panels. This really helps to fill out the model and add much greater levels of realism. This is where I think the Citadel Gloss Null Oil works at its subtle best. The rear already looks great in my opinion, but the gloss coat takes away slightly from the brash vibrance without decaying the look too much. Back to the Sharpie again, and I'm using it to colour the louvres black as they appeared on the real car. I had started doing alternate panes, but ultimately decided to coat the whole thing. Furthering the layering on the headlights, I add some chrome to the edges, not as trim, but to try and gain a three-dimensional look. Finally, I use my Micron pen to add texture to the headlight surface. Now it's time for reassembly number 2. You can see the filled door interiors here, just a basic black coating, but it really darkens the whole interior. Then the seating is refitted, and that's followed by my base with some gorgeous greenlight rubber already in situ. But a better look at that shortly. So here is how the yellow regular wheels Miura looked to begin with. All in all, it was only just in a condition worthy of restoration. That paint had thinned, giving it a very untidy appearance that no amount of cleaning and polishing would ideally fix. The windscreen was cloudy and the axle ends looked dull. Sadly, you couldn't see that nice engine casting through the louvres clearly either. So now, let's see how this once lackluster Lambo looks. It's much fresher in TS16 yellow, it's far less rough looking on the exterior, while that window piece is polished and scrubbed up a great deal clearer. The hubs have been re-chromed, as have the axle ends. As the car rotates, you'll now be able to see the top of that V12 block peering out from the engine bay. It's such a shame the body had no further trim applied, but that's where this next model comes in. Here is the tatty looking Superfast Miura. Again, not in a terrible condition, but the paint has been damaged through play, and the plastic windshield has clouded over. Not that I used them in this build, but the wheels look tired, needing a refresh. Meanwhile, the rear window pane was cloudy, but it had nothing to show off anyway, since the Superfast models had lost the engine casting. But here it is now, the green goddess. Fully detailed, the grills and eyelashes have been filled in black, the headlights have had extensive work done. There's silver skirting along the sides, the panel gaps have been doused in Citadel gloss. The louvres have been coloured a realistic black. All the detailing has been highlighted in various ways across the car. The badges have been picked out in black and chrome, and of course those superb wheels are reminiscent of the original cars. On top of that, the interior was detailed and the door cards painted too. So after that marathon build, it's time for me to say goodbye. If you enjoyed, let me know, hit that like button or leave a comment. Please show your support by subscribing if you haven't already, and do check out my Patreon and Instagram pages. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.